The residential neighborhood of Long Island, New York was bathed in the autumn afternoon sunlight. As the leaves on the maple trees lining the street began to change color, Rachel Carter turned off her car engine in front of her house. For her, this two-story white house was the dream home she had finally acquired in her 7th year of marriage. Rachel's days working at a marketing company in Manhattan were extremely busy. She left home at 7 in the morning and returned around 8 at night, day after day. Her husband Michael was the same way. As a systems engineer at an IT company, his business trips had been increasing lately. He was a gentle and kind man, but due to their busy work schedules, their conversations as a couple tended to be kept to the bare minimum. 2 years had passed since they moved to the suburbs, but Rachel still wasn't used to socializing with the neighbors. Especially Dorothy Hamilton, who lived next door, seemed to be an old-timer in the area and appeared to view the newcomers with curious eyes. Dorothy was a widow who lived alone in a house filled with memories of her late husband. She never failed to tend to her garden and was well informed about neighborhood happenings. They occasionally exchanged small talk, but Rachel was always in a hurry and didn't have time for long conversations. For Rachel, her only source of emotional support was her relationship with her sister Sophie. Sophie was the complete opposite of her sister. She had a free-spirited and bright personality. Working independently as an interior designer, she was full of creativity and always brimming with new ideas. The sisters had been close since childhood, and even as adults, they called each other once a week to share updates about their lives. Sophie's husband David was a serious man who worked in lending at a local bank. He was good with numbers and had a meticulous personality, the complete opposite of Sophie's free-spirited nature. They had married 3 years ago, but lately David had begun focusing more on work than home due to the weight of responsibility that came with his promotion. Working late into the night was not uncommon, and he often left home for business golf on weekends. Rachel was a bit worried about her sister and brother-in-law's relationship, but Sophie appeared cheerful on the surface. On the phone, she would still enthusiastically talk about new projects and amusing episodes with clients. However, lately it seemed like she talked about David less often. Early in their marriage, Rachel and Michael had discussed having children, but as both of their careers began to take off, that topic naturally faded away. Now both were consumed by work, and they often spent weekends exhausted at home. When she entered the house, the usual silence greeted Rachel. Michael was away on business in Chicago this week too, and she had been eating dinner alone for days.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
As she took out simple dinner ingredients from the refrigerator, she thought about her sister. Sophie had been stopping by her house more frequently lately. She would clean while Rachel was away at work or prepare meals ahead of time, which was very thoughtful of her. Sophie would say, "You look so busy, sis, I want to help out a little," and use the spare key Rachel had given her to help with household chores. Rachel was grateful for her sister's kindness, but sometimes she felt complicated emotions, as if her life was becoming dependent on her sister. While eating dinner, Rachel looked over materials for tomorrow's meeting. The new campaign proposal was an important presentation, and if successful, it could be a big opportunity for promotion. When October arrived, Rachel's work became even busier. Tasked with a new product campaign for a major cosmetics company, she worked late into the night for days on end. Preparing presentations, meetings with clients, coordination with the creative team, there was a mountain of things to do. Returning from her Manhattan office after 10 at night became commonplace. Michael was equally busy. Selected as the leader of his company's new system implementation project, his business trips increased due to coordination with West Coast branches. He was away from home about half the month, and the couple only saw each other for brief moments on weekends. Even then, both were exhausted, and their conversations often remained limited to greetings like, "Good work today," and "I have an early day tomorrow." In the midst of these busy days, Sophie's presence became increasingly important to Rachel. Her sister understood her busyness and actively helped with household chores. When Rachel came home, there would be homemade dinner in the refrigerator or laundry neatly folded. Sometimes flowers were arranged, and the air in the room felt fresh and clean. "Thank you so much, Sophie," Rachel expressed her gratitude to her sister over the phone. "Without you, I might have collapsed by now. You're the one who's always working so hard, sis. I have some free time lately, so don't hesitate to ask for help." Sophie's voice was bright, but to Rachel it sounded a bit forced. In fact, Sophie's work was going well too. The interior of a high-end Manhattan restaurant she had designed was featured in a magazine, and new requests were increasing. However, contrary to this success, dark clouds were gathering over her married life. Although David had been promoted to assistant branch manager, the weight of that responsibility left him with no time to consider his family. He worked late on weekdays, and weekends were often spent away from home for business entertainment and meetings. Sophie appeared to be happy about her husband's success on the surface, but inwardly she felt lonely. The couple who had once talked about their dreams for the future now barely even conversed. Even when David was home, he seemed to think only about work and rarely listened to his wife's stories. In this situation, Sophie found herself drawn to a man she met on a new project, Jake Wilson. He was a divorced single father raising his 5-year-old son Liam alone. Working in construction, he recognized Sophie's talent and was a reliable partner both professionally and personally. What started as a purely professional relationship gradually developed into special feelings between them. Jake carried emotional wounds from his divorce, but found healing in Sophie's brightness and creativity. Meanwhile, Sophie, unsatisfied with her relationship with her husband, was drawn to Jake's understanding and kindness. One day in November, Rachel came home unusually early. A client meeting had been suddenly postponed. When she arrived home, she could see Dorothy next door sweeping fallen leaves in her yard. Usually she would exchange brief greetings and go inside, but today Dorothy looked clearly displeased. "Hello, Dorothy," Rachel called out. Dorothy turned around, still holding her broom. "Oh, Rachel. You're home early today, aren't you? My meeting was postponed. Is there something troubling you?" Dorothy hesitated a moment before speaking. "Actually, I've been concerned about noise during the day lately." "From your house?" Rachel was surprised. "Noise? But no one should be home during the day." "That's just it, there definitely are sounds. Music and voices, sometimes even loud laughter. At first I thought it was my imagination, but it's been going on for 2 weeks now." Rachel was puzzled. Michael was away on business, and she wasn't home due to work. "I'm so sorry. Maybe the TV or radio timer is malfunctioning. I'll check it." "That would be helpful. I don't want to complain, but sometimes the music is so loud during my nap time that I can't sleep." Rachel bowed her head in apology. After going inside, she checked the timer settings on the TV and radio, but found no problems. She called Michael to ask, but he said he had no idea either. The next day, Rachel called Sophie. "Yesterday Dorothy mentioned complaints about daytime noise. Are you perhaps playing music when you're at the house?" "Oh, that might be it." Sophie's voice seemed a bit flustered. "When I'm cleaning, I sometimes put on music without thinking." "Sorry, I'll be more careful." "No need to apologize. But Dorothy seems troubled by it, so could you turn down the volume?" "Of course. I'm really sorry." After hanging up, Rachel felt a bit relieved. She thought the mystery was solved. However, complaints from Dorothy continued the following week. This time it was about hearing voices. Voices when cleaning alone. Rachel tilted her head in confusion. Maybe Sophie was talking on the phone while cleaning. With that thought, she called Sophie again to confirm. "Sis, Dorothy's been complaining a lot lately." Sophie's voice had a hint of irritation. "I don't think I'm making that much noise." "I know. But Dorothy has no reason to lie either." Elderly people might be bothered by even small sounds. I'll be careful, but maybe we shouldn't be too neurotic about it. Rachel thought Sophie's words made sense. However, deep down she felt something nagging at her. She was also concerned that her sister's voice seemed a bit colder than before. When December arrived, Rachel's work reached its climax. The cosmetics company campaign was successful, and there was even talk of her promotion. However, in the midst of that busyness, household problems were put on the back burner. Michael's business trips increased, and their relationship as a couple became increasingly distant. Then one day, Dorothy complained again. This time, Dorothy had the most serious expression she'd ever seen. "Rachel, it was particularly bad today. I definitely heard a woman screaming." Rachel was horrified. Screaming? Yes, and not just once. Over and over again. It was like someone was having an argument. Rachel was confused. Sophie was supposed to be cleaning alone, so why would there be screaming? Even if she was talking on the phone, it didn't seem like the kind of content that would involve shouting. "I'm truly sorry. I'll definitely check tomorrow." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. What was happening inside her house? Michael wouldn't be back until tomorrow night. She had no choice but to check for herself. The next morning, Rachel asked her supervisor if she could leave early in the afternoon, citing health issues. Rachel left work early and headed home. Her heart was pounding violently in the car. Dorothy's words wouldn't leave her mind. A woman screaming, arguments, and her neighbor's confident expression that someone was definitely there. She was both afraid to know what was happening in her house and unable to bear not knowing. When she entered the residential area, the usual silence pervaded. It was 3 o'clock on a weekday afternoon, a time when neighbors were away for work or errands. Rachel parked in front of her house and looked for Dorothy's figure. She could see her silhouette through the window, but she didn't seem to be out in the garden today. As she was about to head toward the front door, Dorothy's front door burst open forcefully. Dorothy appeared with a stern expression and walked straight toward Rachel. "Rachel!" Dorothy's voice was trembling with anger. "It's been noisy all day. What on earth is going on?" Rachel stopped. "Dorothy, I'm sorry. I just came home to check on things. Today was particularly bad. Music has been playing since morning, loud laughter, and I can hear a woman's voice talking to someone. It's like they're having a party or something." Rachel was confused. "But no one should be home. My husband is on a business trip, and I just got back from work. No one home." Dorothy's eyes widened. "That can't be right. Someone is definitely there. And not just one person. There must be multiple people. I'm truly sorry. I'll check right away." Rachel bowed her head. Someone was shouting. Dorothy raised her voice. "This morning I heard loud voices like they were arguing. Please consider the neighbors." With that, Dorothy angrily returned to her house. The sound of her front door slamming shut weighed heavily on Rachel's chest. Rachel tried to open the front door with trembling hands. But before inserting the key, she noticed something. The door was already unlocked. She was sure she had locked it when she left that morning. Sophie must have entered using her spare key. The moment she put her hand on the doorknob, she could definitely hear sounds from inside the house. Not music, but human voices. A woman's laughter, a man's low voice, and a child's high-pitched voice were all mixed together. Rachel's blood ran cold. What Dorothy had been saying was true. Holding her breath and listening carefully, she could hear cheerful conversation coming from the living room. There were definitely multiple people there. Rachel's heart was beating so violently it felt like it might burst. Who was in her house, and why? Quietly opening the door, warm air flowed into the hallway. The heating was on, and there was even the delicious smell of cooking wafting from somewhere. It was like the everyday atmosphere of someone's family home. But this was her own house. As she approached the living room, the voices became clearer. The woman's voice was definitely Sophie's. But she didn't recognize the man's voice. And why could she hear a child's voice? "Liam, don't get so close to the TV," she heard Sophie's gentle voice. "Mama, this cartoon is funny," the child's voice answered. Rachel stopped. "Mama." Sophie wasn't supposed to have children. "Sophie, coffee's ready," a man's voice called from the kitchen. Rachel's mind went blank. In her own house, an unknown man was making coffee. And her sister Sophie was having family-like conversations with an unknown child. What was happening? Gathering her courage, Rachel put her hand on the living room door. Before opening it, she took another deep breath. Then, steeling herself, she opened the door. An unbelievable scene spread out in the living room. An unknown man was sitting on her sofa, and a boy about 5 years old was playing with toys on the floor. And from the kitchen, Sophie was about to appear with warm drinks. The moment Rachel and Sophie's eyes met, a silence fell as if time had stopped. The mug slipped from Sophie's hands and shattered on the floor. The sound of ceramic fragments scattering broke the silence. "Sis," Sophie's voice was trembling. Her face was pale as a sheet, as if she had seen a ghost. The man on the sofa also turned around. He had well-defined features and was wearing work clothes. He too seemed surprised by the unexpected visitor. The boy playing on the floor sensed the tense atmosphere among the adults and looked up at Rachel with an anxious expression. His large brown eyes overflowed with innocence, but also showed confusion. "Mama, who is this person?" the boy asked Sophie. Those words pierced Rachel's heart sharply. This child was calling Sophie Mama. But Sophie didn't have children. And who was this unknown man? Rachel stood there frozen, unable to move. The reality happening in her own house felt like a nightmare. But this was undeniably real. Her sister Sophie was spending time in her house like a family with an unknown man and child. "Can you explain this to me?" Rachel's voice was hoarse. "What exactly is going on here?" Sophie tried to speak but couldn't find the words. The man stood up and placed his hand on the child's shoulder. Heavy silence filled the living room, with only the sound of the wall clock echoing. The silence seemed to last forever. Rachel's gaze desperately tried to understand the unbelievable scene happening in her own house. Sophie's pale face, the confused expression of the unknown man, and the presence of the boy who had innocently called her Mama. Nothing seemed real. Hurried footsteps could be heard from the kitchen, and the man from earlier emerged from the back. He appeared to be about 36 years old with the build of a construction worker, hastily wiping his hands on an apron as he entered the living room. Behind him, an even more cluttered kitchen was visible, as if someone had been cooking for a long time. "Sophie, this is..." The man made eye contact with Sophie, clearly agitated. "Jake, let me explain," Sophie finally found her voice. It was shaky, but she was trying to form words somehow. "Jake." Rachel repeated the name in her mind. It was the name of the work-related man Sophie had been talking about frequently lately. But why was he in her house, and why was this child calling Sophie Mama? She couldn't understand it at all. "Sis, there are circumstances to this," Sophie tried to approach Rachel while avoiding the ceramic fragments scattered on the floor. "It was an emergency situation." "Let me explain." "An emergency?" Anger began to mix into Rachel's voice. "Playing house with an unknown man and child in my house is an emergency." The boy called Liam sensed the hostile atmosphere among the adults and pressed closer to Jake's legs. Tears were welling up in his large eyes. "Papa, I'm scared," Liam murmured in a small voice. Jake picked up his son and rubbed his back reassuringly. "It's okay, Liam. The adults just need to talk for a bit." Rachel became even more confused seeing this scene. This man definitely had a son. And Sophie, this man, and the child were acting like a real family. Sophie, I want an explanation, Rachel said, trying to remain calm. Why are you all in my house? And why is this child calling you Mama? Sophie took a deep breath. Jake's apartment is small, and I felt sorry for Liam. Here it's spacious, there's a yard, and it's a safe, good environment for a child. That's the reason. Rachel's voice became shrill. You're using my house without consulting me. But you and Michael are so busy, you're hardly ever home. I thought no one would be inconvenienced. Sophie's excuse was weak. Jake spoke up. I'm sorry. I should have stopped this too. But when I heard Sophie was your sister, I thought it would be okay since you're family. It's okay because we're family. Rachel looked incredulous. Using my house without my permission is okay because we're family. At that moment, the dots began connecting in Rachel's mind. Sophie's frequent visits to the house lately, helping with cleaning and cooking, and the daytime noise Dorothy had reported. Everything became clear. How long has this been going on? Rachel's voice was quiet, but that quietness was somehow more frightening. Sophie looked away. About a month. A month? Rachel raised her voice. For a month you've been playing house in my home. It's not playing house, Sophie protested. We're serious. Jake and Liam are important to me. Things aren't working out with David anymore. He only cares about work and doesn't pay attention to me at all. Rachel was stunned. More than the fact that her sister was having an affair, she was shocked that it was taking place in her own house. Then why didn't you tell me honestly? Why did you lie and deceive me? Because I didn't think you would understand. Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes. You always say the right things, sis. But sometimes the heart is more important. Because the heart is important, it's okay to betray me. Rachel's anger reached its peak. I trusted you and even gave you a house key. You used that to have an affair in my house. Jake put Liam down and stepped forward. I'm sorry, it's my responsibility too. But we truly love each other. Sophie is very important to me and Liam. You love each other. Rachel stared at Jake. Are you single? Jake's face turned pale. That is. Answer me, Rachel's voice was ice cold. I have a wife, Jake answered in a small voice. But we're separated. Separated? But not divorced. Jake silently nodded. Sophie's face drained of color. Rachel understood everything. Sophie was having an affair with a married man, and that man was also married. And they had been using her house to play ideal family. A fine house, spacious living room, well-maintained yard. They were staging an upper-class lifestyle that Sophie couldn't experience in her own small apartment. Get out, Rachel said quietly. Get out right now. Sis, please. Listen to me, Sophie pleaded desperately. There's nothing to talk about. You betrayed my trust. You took advantage of my kindness and deceived me. I can never trust you again. Liam started crying. He was frightened by the adults' sudden argument. Jake picked up his son and exchanged glances with Sophie. Let's go, Sophie, Jake said. We can't cause any more trouble. Sophie looked at her sister with her last hope. Sis, I was truly happy. There was a warmth here that I couldn't feel in my married life with David. Please, give me another chance. Rachel shook her head. I gave you a chance from the beginning. If you had spoken honestly, I think I would have tried to understand. But you chose to lie and use me. That's everything. Jake and Sophie began packing their belongings with resignation. Liam was crying as he put his favorite toys in his bag. Rachel watched the scene while feeling complex emotions swirling in her heart. Anger and sadness, and the pain of betrayal were all mixed together. 30 minutes later, they left the house. Sophie placed the key on the table at the end and left through the front door without looking back. Rachel was left alone in the living room, staring at the scattered ceramic fragments. 3 months later in spring, Rachel was planting flowers in her garden. Cherry blossom petals danced in the wind, announcing the beginning of a new season. Dorothy called out from next door. "Rachel, it's been nice and quiet lately. That noise problem has been resolved, hasn't it?" Rachel smiled wryly. "Yes, thanks to you. Without your honest feedback, Dorothy, I might never have learned the truth." Dorothy nodded with satisfaction. Sometimes saying difficult things is part of being neighbors. We help each other out. The subsequent developments were exactly as Rachel had expected. Sophie and Jake's relationship didn't last long. Jake ultimately chose to reconcile with his wife. For him, the relationship with Sophie was merely a temporary escape to heal from the wounds of divorce. With a son like Liam, he prioritized rebuilding his family. Sophie lost everything. Abandoned by Jake, her affair was also discovered by her husband David, who demanded a divorce. Although David had been work-focused, his anger upon learning of his wife's betrayal was intense, and he refused all attempts at discussion. Sophie couldn't expect alimony or property division and had to leave their apartment alone. Her work as an interior designer also suffered dramatically when the affair scandal became known in the industry. Particularly for family home design, she lost client trust and almost no work came her way. In the end, Sophie had to return to her parents' home. Going back to her parents' house at 32 was humiliating for her, but she had no other choice. Her parents were disappointed learning of their daughter's situation, and especially her mother couldn't figure out how to explain it to the neighbors and became mentally exhausted. Rachel received many phone calls from her parents. They pleaded, "Please forgive Sophie, and your sisters, so please make up." However, Rachel's mind was made up. "Mom, the issue isn't about being sisters. It's about betraying trust," Rachel answered calmly. "I love Sophie. But without trust, a relationship cannot exist." Her mother hung up the phone in tears. The family splitting apart was the greatest sadness for the parents. Meanwhile, Rachel and Michael's relationship improved as a result of this incident. Michael learned about the problems his wife had been handling alone and reduced his business trips to spend more time at home. The two reconfirmed their bond as a married couple and realized the importance of cherishing each other. Rachel also achieved promotion at work and was assigned new projects. Balancing home and work was still difficult, but with Michael's support, she was living fulfilling days. One day, Rachel happened to see Jake and his son Liam at the market. Jake was with a woman who appeared to be his wife, and the three looked like a happy family. Liam was holding his father's hand and walking along cheerfully. Rachel watched the scene with complex feelings. The ideal family she had seen in her house at that time had ultimately been an illusion. Jake may have always intended to return to his real family. Sophie probably couldn't accept that fact. In the evening, Rachel was talking with Dorothy in the garden. "Human relationships are difficult things," Dorothy murmured while drinking tea. "But being honest is the most important thing. Lies always come out and hurt people." "That's right," Rachel agreed. "Without your courageous feedback, Dorothy, I might have been deceived for much longer. I was torn about whether to say something at first. But I thought I had to speak up for the peace of the neighborhood and for your sake too." In the spring evening, Rachel stood alone in her garden. What is family, what is trust? She had learned many things over these past months. Blood relation alone doesn't make a true family. Only with honesty, thoughtfulness, and above all trust can real bonds be formed. Looking at the light leaking from the neighboring house's window, Rachel smiled. She felt anew the happiness of having honest people like Dorothy nearby.